Today, we're looking at a green ink by KWZ, their Iron Gall Green number 4. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, down below in the description, there's timestamps of all the parts of the video, and if you are in a hurry, you can skip around, but if you got the time, I'd appreciate you if you check out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here and like ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Fountain Pen Revolution Himalaya with a flex nib. I wrote with it for a day, then used it to take the notes for this video. In order to have some standardization in my writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, some spots of shading going on, just a little peppered in there. The extra fine is a hair darker than the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 8 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 16 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, and there is none. Tomoe River has no bleeding and normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. Extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 13 seconds to dry. Medium, same tone as the extra fine and the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 24 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation because there is none. Rhodia with no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, a peppering of shading throughout. It's kind of nice to see. It's not too bad. If it was a little lighter, you could see more, and along comes the extra fine, which is a little lighter than the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, a little bit better peppering of darker letters here. 9 seconds to dry. Thank God it wasn't too dark. Well, medium is much darker than the extra fine, a little bit darker than the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 16 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us, scrubby for the extra, words. Scrubby for the medium show us no color variation, we had none. The extra fine shows us a little bit, and we had some in the writing. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is a very light brown at the bottom that pushes its way up into a nice bright green and a very dark blue at the top. Now, the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And we see that that brown has started to gather up on the bottom, started to form a little line for itself and bond with the paper. Now, the green is a bit more obvious at this point in where it's at. And that blue at the top, it still looks like a dark blue, but maybe not as dark a blue. This one I let dry for 24 hours before I dunked it into water, and that brownish line on the bottom, much darker, much more there. The green is, it still does push up as a very light khaki. The green is very much the same as what we had in the last chromatography, and the same with that blue at the top. They're just not traveling quite as far. Now this one, I let it dry for 72 hours before I put it into the water. And that brown is really formed the line on the bottom. Very little of it is pushing its way up. We see that the green is a little bit brighter than it appeared in a 24-hour chromatography strip, but the blue is still pretty much that same blue. Again, we're hitting that 24 hours seems to be the major mark for these inks. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I wouldn't use it in a note-taking situation. It's an Iron Gall ink. I should be able to highlight it without a problem. The capital H is getting blown out. There's no reason for that to happen, considering how this ink should be getting made. I'm at a little bit of a loss, but I wouldn't use it in a note-taking situation if I wanted to go back and highlight. Water is reactivating and lifting, but not all. We're still seeing some of the green left on the paper. Now, water is all that it took to get it out of my pen. Pen flush is doing everything that water did, and really nothing more. Not at all. 1/3 bleach solution completely removes it from the paper. Again, water's all that it took for me to get it out of my pen. I test viscosity or flow by using a tilt test that I've linked in this video. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. KWZ's Iron Gall Green number 4 has a viscosity of 2.29, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those, and what I found is the average dry time is 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. KWZ's Iron Gall Green number 4 has an average dry time of 14 seconds, making it still normal. Instead of finding inks that look like KWZ's Iron Gall Green number 4, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. So I went with a nice purple, because sometimes I just can't help but put purples with greens. I chose Noodler's Socrates. The second writing sample is done on Levenger, black and red, and Strathmore calligraphy paper. Here we see Levenger notebooks. Now we get no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some decent shading here, in that you see some much darker parts of letters. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Again, a peppering of very dark letters. Look at the E in over, especially next to the O. Look at the K in quick. The word the compared to the word brown above it. So it's definitely there. Much more subtle. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is by far the darkest tone on the page, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, although the extra fine certainly has a nice peppering of dark spots. Black and red notebooks. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a little bit darker than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 5 seconds to dry. Medium is a little bit darker than the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 7 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any. And Strathmore calligraphy paper, with no bleeding and no ghosting. So what would look at times like you are achieving feathering, like the K in quick here, the G in the Iron Gall. What is appearing like it's feathering is not feathering. It performed very well on this. This is a laid paper, and because of that, it's got a texture. And so when it looks this way, what's actually happening is the ink is following the texture of the paper. It's not feathering. This was just not the best ink for this paper for that reason. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. My correction, it has some shading, some darker spots, like you look at in the pound sign, the octa something, I forget, and I'm a math nerd. Anyway. Extra fine is about the same tone as the stub, maybe just a hair lighter, with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some very nice pepperings of shadings throughout here. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is by far the darkest tone on the page, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, although we got a nice peppering of dark spots in the extra fine, and that is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of KWZ Green Iron Gall number 4? Now, I've been testing a lot of Iron Gall inks, and I haven't seen the negative effects that people talk about with Iron Galls, so I'm not too worried about Iron Gall as a name attachment. I understand it's supposed to come with some permanence, and yet it doesn't always seem to. This green comes out as much darker than is my preference. Really quite a bit too dark a green for me, but it's not bad. It is still pretty good. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I found a dry stub or broad really put down my most pleasant tone, although if you use it from a wet pen, the dark green that you get is still a very nice green. I put out a new ink review every single day, so that if you're not already subscribed, I'm going to remind you, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks for watching.